Yeah.
And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 4, episode 31. And we have another exciting episode of the In the Room segment, which is where fake national committee members tell us what the real national committee members are probably doing. But here's where it gets interesting. The fake committee members have legit street cred. Let me introduce them to you. First of all, Sara Quatrocky, the former chair of the men's basketball committee just last year. Sarah's the AD of Maryville College in Tennessee. We have Mr. Ryan Kane, who's the athletic director at Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Ryan was one of the national committee members last year. And another longtime national committee member is Mr. Rick Ferry, the head men's basketball coach and AD at Albright College. First, let me start out with Sara. Sara, obviously, when we formed the In the Room segment, it was hard-hitting shows like this that we had in mind, where we had stuff to talk about. I mean, I know we've covered Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving memories and, Ryan watching the Packers and stuff, but now we're in the real heart of it. Tell us about your excitement level for the QCast today, Sara.
Oh man, I mean, the three of us have talked, and I know we have double Rick Ferry today, which is exciting.
Yeah.
But the three of us have talked, and I mean, it's almost like, keeping us in this. I know you called us fake to start the show. I think that we're still very much real. We're still very much in this.
We'll see.
Yeah, we've come ready today. And we're ready to talk some D3 hoops. Hopefully we can give nice little insight, because we still have our sources that the committee they met this week, and so we do have some real in the room things to talk about today.
That's exciting. And Rick, we got to go to you because you show up here as two different people. This show is meant to give people an insight into the real workings of the committee. And you've had many technical issues along the way in the room segment this year. You've had to sort of connect twice. I don't understand all the workings, but Rick, is it fair that this simulates the real committee work and that you've had some IT challenges? Talk about that a little bit, Rick, if you would.
Well, yeah, I mean, typically the production value on the NCA calls is really high. So, in the room, sometimes, we get corrupt links and we struggle with it. So I'm currently coming to you on video on my laptop and audio on my mobile device. So,
right.
So it is double. But we're here and we adapt, just like the National Committee adapts on the fly. You don't know what curveballs are coming your way.
Right.
You don't know what random SOS is going to show up, what random bid thieves are going to be out there. So we're ready. We're ready to roll in the room just like we were on the committee.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the authentic simulation for how it works. And then Ryan Kane, you had some trouble connecting as well. The Jamaica background there for Kenosha, I think it was corrupt and it caused an issue. Talk about how things are going with you, Ryan Kane.
Yeah, greetings from the Caribbean up here in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Things are great. For those listeners out there, I encourage everyone to get their bingo cards out. Rick already alluded to a couple key terms that will be thrown around here today. Bid thief, SOS. I'll be sure to ring the bell every time one of us says a term that is quite often thrown around in the room. So we know that we're on brand with being in the room. The only difference right now is this is a pretty comfortable hour to be doing this call. In the room, if you're on the West Coast, if you're Region 10 out there, our friend Doc, he's typically, 5 a.m.-ish trying to figure out how to get the kids on, never can quite underestimate the sacrifice that goes into being on the National Tournament Committee.
Well, I certainly appreciate all of you guys doing this and taking time out of your real jobs to join me on the QCast. And let's just cover some logistical stuff first here, guys. Let's get a few things going here. Okay, can everyone see the screen there? Are we good? Can everyone see that screen?
Yes.
You know, Sarah, I got to ask you. Some people say
Yeah.
that the QCast is not produced, but I've
That-
just shared.
that was-
I've just shared a PowerPoint screen.
Wow.
Can you talk about the production value here?
Well, I mean, first of all, the production that's going into this, bringing us all together, and then that quick flip right there, that was pretty impressive.
I
So,
thought it was. Thank you
yeah.
very much. The QCast has to evolve. So
Yeah.
let's talk about where we are and why we're here today. This is the start of a series of very cool things in the men's basketball, women's basketball seasons. We're about at national committee ranking number 1, which is going to be Tuesday, and then you can see there's a ranking on the 13th, and you can see all these dates coming up that lead all the way into the championship weekend. We're going to talk about what ranking 1 is in just a second. So I just want to start with why we're meeting today and the fact that big things start to happen next week. So we'll talk more about that. Want to also give a big shout out to the men's basketball committees. So these are the racks, and we'll kind of talk about these in just a second. But here's all the members of the regional advisory committees. This is regions 1 through 6, and here's 7 through 10. You know, Rick, you've been on these committees for a long time, and I know this is something you've enjoyed. Give a little shout out, if you would, to these RAC members and national committee members that have tough work in front of them here. Talk a little bit about your former peers here, Rick.
Yeah, you know, it's an incredible commitment that people make. I don't think everyone realizes just what people have to do. If you're on the rack, you know, you're working on Sunday night, you know, because all the data is getting released, and you've got to go in and sort of do your own personal mock ranking for your region, and that's what gets everything started. So you're working Sunday night, then on Monday morning you're back at it again on your rack with the chair of your region, and so everybody that shows up has worked on Sunday night, they've worked on Monday morning, and then the national committee members have the incredibly heavy lift ahead of them, where they're going to be on a national call on Tuesday, which, you know, is a minimum of 3 hours and can easily go in excess of 4 hours. So the commitment is significant, but we all do it because we love it.
And is it fair to say, Sarah, I think the way this is set up is the top name on each rack is the rack member, the chair of the rack that goes to the national committee. Is that correct? So Paul and Stephanie and Luke, and I think I'm reading that correct.
Yes. Yep. That's how they have them listed here. That's correct.
So anyone out there wondering, like, who's, you know, people are going to start saying like things like the NCAA is screwing us in the regional rankings. This is the group here. It's a group of people from Division III athletic departments that are on the racks. This isn't some group in a closet in Indianapolis. This is the group here that leads the process. Wanted to also just remind everybody, we don't need to spend any time here, but there are a different number of regionally ranked teams per region. Actually, all have 7, except for Region 2 has 6. So when you see the rankings come out, these are the number of teams. You can see the number of eligible teams in the region. So there are 10 regions. 9 of them have 7 regionally ranked teams, and Region 2 has 6. And this is where we get into the nitty gritty, guys. So when we talk about the alphabetical ranking and what's coming, I think most people are familiar with the 5 primary selection criteria, which are win-loss percentage, head-to-head, results versus common opponents, results versus ranked opponents, aka RROs, as we like to say. Maybe that's on the bingo card, possibly, and then in SOS. So Ryan, let me ask you here. Let's have you talk about this a little bit. The first ranking is missing one key criteria because we haven't had a ranking yet. There's no way for us to have RROs. So talk a little bit, Ryan, about the theory of, you know, how that plays into why we have an alphabetical and not a numbered ranking coming up this week.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, you know, what you're trying to do is just figure out who are the right teams. So, you know, we're talking about rewarding those teams that have gone out, played tough schedules, had, you know, beaten good teams along the way and won some games. And then let's focus on those teams because it's on the bingo card. It all shakes out in the end. So, you know, each week, you know, it becomes clearer and clearer, even though it can seem muddy at times. a week from today, we'll be looking at the schedule and say, well, this team's going to play this team this week and this team's going to play this team. So it's all going to shake out. So we can't predict the future. We just have to look at what we have in front of us right now, the totality of the resume. Ding, ding, ding. That's on your bingo card,
Bingo
folks.
card.
Mark that one off. And you just focus on getting the right teams right now. So it's a simpler process for sure. And you're certainly, if you're a chair, you're educating your RAC members on, the criteria and what we need to make sure we're focusing on.
Sarah, I think you're familiar from being the chair last year that, like, D3 Fan Nation doesn't love the alphabetical ranking. I'm going to quote, you guys know Matt Snyder, who is just a very mild mannered Calvin grad. And, he used very strong language with me yesterday. He said the alphabetical rankings are BS, but he didn't say B and S. He said the full thing. And I don't want to say that because Jim Haney caused Hoopsville to lose its PG-13 ranking last week. I don't want to do that to the QCast, but Sarah, for those who think that the alphabetical rankings are BS, like a Matt Snyder, just a little more thought from you on like why these are necessary. Couldn't we find a way to number them this week, or why is this so important we do it this way?
Yeah. Yeah. Nice shout out to Jimbo. Yeah, he's always keeping everybody on
It's a
his
problem.
toes, isn't he? Yeah, he must not have had his allotment of Dunkin' Donuts that day. So yeah, the alphabetical rankings, I know you either love them or you hate them. There's really no in between. But unfortunately, they're necessary for the amount of weeks that we have. And I think as we started off, we mentioned that there's only so many rankings, and this is a group of individuals that all have other jobs, right? So we could add another week of rankings. We could add another. I know there's been talk about making the practice rankings, which the committee just did this past week. Maybe you publish the practice rankings, make those. But all of that, there's so much red tape, Bob, that has to go through that to get that approved and processed, and everything goes through champs committees. And right now, this is not just a basketball issue, it's across the board in all the sports that the NCAA has. And for right now, until the criteria is the criteria, this is really the only way to validate the first rankings that we have, is to make them alphabetical.
I appreciate that.
And if I could add one more
Please.
part to that, without having regionally ranked opponents,
Yep.
You don't have all the criteria at your disposal, so that can cause a significant shift in the second ranking.
Right.
If so this keeps it a little safer, a little cleaner, because oh my gosh, we didn't lose and we went from third to fifth.
Yep.
And it
Right.
kind of takes that off the table until we have all the criteria at our disposal.
Yeah, or it takes somebody from not being ranked into the rankings, and
Right.
like, well, why didn't they rank them last week and now they're ranked?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it kind of holds the validity of what the committee's doing week one. And there's a lot of, I think until you're on the committee, until you're seeing the ins and outs of it, you don't know what you don't know. And I know that that's hard for just the people on the outside looking. And even looking at Matt Snyder's, data, it's great. He already has key wins on there, right? He has that information, but the committee doesn't have that.
Right. Well, I appreciate that.
They're not using that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so I'm just an average fan right now, right? Because I'm a fake committee member.
Correct.
So I'm using, when I look at his stuff, like, oh wow, like he's already got those key wins on there. He's got listed like, oh, they beat a number 1 team or they beat a number 5 team. The committee's not, their system made up that way yet.
Yeah, so the data out there, the people who are doing amazing things like Drew Pasteur, who's D3 Bubble, and Matt Snyder on the D3 Datacast, they're projecting stuff.
Yeah.
And the committee is doing stuff in real time in the moment. They're not trying to guess what someone's record's going to be or those kind of things. We'll get into that in a second. And then this is just literally an example of like last year's Region 7 first ranking. Ryan, can you confirm that Calvin alphabetically comes before Worcester? Can you clarify that, Ryan Kane?
I don't want to shout out my alma mater. I didn't do a great job at my private liberal arts college, so this alphabet wasn't my thing. If you want to talk economics or history, I mean,
That's fair. I'm with you on that. I will confirm.
Okay.
This is in a correct alphabetical order. I've checked that. Calvin, Carnegie Mellon, etc. This is what last year's ranking looked like. And just to stress to people, this is what you're going to see Tuesday. Is you're not going to see an ordered ranking. So we're just trying to emphasize what's coming. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter here. Getting back to this Matt Snyder character, huge shout out, because he made a dedicated page for you guys for this exercise. And before we get into using this to do a little like alphabetical ranking stuff, Rick, could you stress and just talk a little bit? This is not what the real committee has. Maybe could you talk about what the committee is looking at? Because we're using this because this is what we have. This has some data in it that's very helpful to us. But Rick, how different is this than what the committee is using?
So on the surface, looking at it just like this, there are similarities to what the committee sees. The difference is that the committee has the ability to compare and contrast teams. So if they want to look at John Carroll and Trine, they can just isolate those two.
Right.
And so now they automatically see if they have played each other, who their common opponents are. Okay. Or if they want to put a third team in there, or a fourth team, or a fifth team, and they can look at it. And so there's constantly being done comparisons between teams. And sure, we could do that, but that's going to take some time, right?
Right.
It's literally 3 clicks, on your mouse, and you've got that information. So they can fly through that. We want to do a comparison of John Carroll and Trine, and one of the primary criteria is record versus common opponents. Well, we have to go to the schedule for each of those teams. Say, right. Okay, who did they play? Oh, they won, they lost, and sort of back our way into computing that. And so there's a lot to do the actual, all the criteria and everything using the D3 data case would take a lot of time. Right. All right. You could get there, but right now all we're looking at here is 2 of the criteria.
And for those that want to go see this in real time, d3datacast.com, Matt has every region where he's got projections. He's mathematically taking winning percentage, SOS, and some other stuff, and he's creating his own ranking. So for this, what Matt was kind enough to do, in that top right corner, you see February 2nd at 8:09 a.m. So just this morning, I was bugging him to say, could you sort this in order of winning percentage? To me, that seemed like the easiest way to just put it on the screen. So this is sorted by John Carroll's 950. I cut this off at a 500 winning percentage. I figure that anyone under that has zero chance in this region to even be in the convert. This is the strongest, deepest region. So let's talk here a little bit, Sara, around, again, admitting that we're using data that's not exactly what the racks have, but it's serviceable and good. Where do you start with this in an alphabetical ranking, Sara? Are you looking at like winning percentage first and then going from there? Or what would you do with this to try to start putting 7 teams in an alphabetical ranking?
Yeah, so first of all, it's really important this week, right? When you're in the room trying to make sure that you're getting the 7 teams right. Okay, that's the number one priority, is that you're getting the right 7 teams in those rankings. And what we always say is that your winning percentage brings you to your table, right? And then you're looking at the SOS to kind of validate that. And so you would always start, that I think that's why we kind of asked, if we could get this sorted by winning percentage so that we can look at it. So we're going to start by looking at those winning percentages, and then, we'd probably, start filtering out by, validating by those SOSs, and, start from there. Rick, how would you look at it a different way?
No, that's exactly what I've always done is I sort everything by winning percentage, and then I start looking at SOS.
Yep.
This region's great because
It is.
you have some great contrasts at the top of it. And every committee looks at things maybe just a little bit different. Just there's little tweaks in the value they place on different categories. And while everything's equal, it's like, as the weeks go by, you sort of you form a train of thought of how much you look at SOS, and is there a point where you don't look at somebody because of their SOS? And we know, having done this several years, kind of what the general trend is. So no, that's exactly how I go about it. Winning percentage, and then let's look at SOS, and we can work our way through it that way.
The other thing I'll stress with Matt's stuff here is that the column to the far right that he calls key wins, that's his way of as this goes on of identifying potential regionally ranked opponent wins.
Yeah.
So his model is predict, like if you look at Marietta, he believes that Marietta has a win over Christopher Newport, which is a number 5 in their region, and Illinois Wesleyan, which he has as a number 7 in region 8. Because this ranking, it doesn't have RROs, like we really won't be trying to project that at all. Although there could be a win that shows up that's relevant, like John Carroll's win over Mount Union. That could come into play here, Ryan, correct in that because we're using 4 of the primary criteria. John Carroll with a head-to-head over Mount Union, who's in this conversation, that would be relevant to this week, correct?
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. I mean, if Matt thinks it's BS, he's right, because we could rank these in order based on the data he's given us. I mean, we know who some of these key wins are. I mean, we could take the numbers out and we could say, wow, you know what? Like Trine, that's a big win over Platteville. Whether or not they're ranked 1 in that region over there or not, like it's a good win,
Right.
and that will likely hold some weight as we kind of go through. But as it sits right now, like we don't have that, but we could start talking about that. And that's how you can start to separate some teams other than just the stuff that's in front of you. And to your point, Bob, I mean, you cut it off at 500. The same thing can be said when we start sorting data as a rack. You can have a winning percentage that's too low to be considered, and you can also have an SOS that's too low to be considered as well. So sometimes we already are eliminating teams based on their SOS. Great point. And I think that's a great point about the Platteville that shows up here is, again, a D3 bubble and Matt Snyder stuff. They're factoring in RROs. And so like Trine's win over Platteville, whether Platteville is 1 or 2 in region 9, we don't know, but that's a huge win that next week when they bring in RROs will certainly come into play, but it doesn't come into play. I guess it could come into play, though. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. Common opponents, Trine beat Platteville, and Calvin the next night Calvin lost to Platteville, Trine beat Platteville, back-to-back days. Common opponent, that's a factor here, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So let me let you guys kind of work through a little bit of how you would go about starting to write down teams that are in this group of 7 for the alphabetical ranking. I'll maybe just kick it to Sara maybe to lead this group of 3 through it, and you guys talk through it. I'll do some jotting and asking of some questions.
All right. So basically, if I was leading the conversation here, I would automatically, pretty clearly write down John Carroll and Trine. They're going to be in the mix here. We have two clear outliers coming up next, with below 500 SOSs. I would put them off to the side. We'll talk about them later.
So Geneva and St. Vincent,
Correct.
just to those 468 and 495, those SOSs, those are very, very low relative to the other teams that are up here in winning percentage, right? So you see those teams well into the fives. So we're just
Yep.
going to send those off to the side for a
Okay.
second and not write them down.
Yep, those will just kind of be off to the side for now, or we won't, we'll talk about them later. In my opinion, maybe for one of the last spots in this region.
So we got John Carroll and Trine that based on 950 and those SOSs.
Yep.
Even as we get into the common opponents we talked about head to head, we feel good about those two. So where do we go from there?
Yep, and then obviously with Calvin and Mount Union having the same, from the data that we have here, they got the same winning percentage. Calvin's got that little bit of a higher SOS. They're going to be the next two that we would write down here.
So Calvin and Mount Union, we feel, at least in our first pass, we feel that Calvin and Mount
Yep.
Union will be regionally ranked here.
Yep, and then definitely Case Western. They've got well over an 800 winning percentage, and the third highest SOS in the region.
So those five, John Carroll, Trine, Calvin, Mount Union, Case,
Yep.
seem like 1, 2, 3. Those are five, and those feel like very safe picks. Ryan, anything you're seeing differently at that kind of those first five?
Nope, we're spot on. And just one point of clarity, like a 0.495 for St. Vincent and SOS, not strong in this region, but in other regions might get them in the mix. That could be. This is a strong region, to Rick's point. I mean, there's 13 teams with a 555 or higher SOS, which is very, very strong.
Yeah.
And I think
that's a good point. That's a good point there, Kaner, because a 595 and in another region, that might get you in initial conversations to be ranked. So, that's what's difficult when doing this from region to region. You just have to remember that.
And with the SOS, it's not that there is any kind of a floor of any sort. There's not a floor. It's just, this is about, you're being compared with teams in the region. And as we look at the options here, we have many teams that have a combination of incredible winning percentage plus incredible SOS. So it's not that there's some magical number where, like, if you're under 0.500 SOS that you're out. But in this case, competitively, that's what we're bumping up against with Geneva and St. Vincent's for the moment, right? Am I saying that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And I know you cut this off at 500 winning percentage, and that would mean that the strongest SOS in the region is probably Baldwin Wallace, based on what you can see on what they've played on the year, but they've only won 5 games.
Right.
So
Right. Great point. So we have 5 teams that we feel really good about.
And
Again,
then
yeah.
I was gonna say, obviously, because now we've got Calvin down in the mix, hope comes to play, because Hope has 700 winning percentage. They have the second highest SOS.
And let me also throw this out with Hope, and just so we can talk about if this is a factor, is Hope beat Calvin.
Yep.
And Marietta lost to Calvin. So when we're evaluating Hope and Marietta, that would have to be something that comes into play here, correct? The common opponent nature of Calvin and what that means to Hope and Marietta. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say. Like, for those last spots, we would be considering, teams for me that I'm seeing in this mix. It would be Hope, it would be Marietta. And then obviously, if you're looking at, I went in and looked at, like, okay, between Geneva and St. Vincent, obviously Geneva's won more games, but St. Vincent beat Geneva. So from that list, I would probably take maybe St. Vincent, because they got a little higher SOS. So I would throw them in this mix to compare, because they have one of the higher winning percentages for the last spot, just to do our due diligence. So I would throw them in the mix for those last couple spots.
And St. Vincent has the much greater SOS, 0.495 over
Correct.
468. And then you
Correct.
said, and good call. So St. Vincent beat Geneva. Is that correct?
Yep. So I did my research there, and then I would definitely throw Marietta up there for consideration based on their numbers. And honestly, as a first call for the national committee, I know Rick knows, so does Kaner know. They will already be talking about what do we do with Carnegie. They've got a 611. There we go. They got a
Here's your
611.
bingo card. Got to
Yep.
wave the UAA flag. It's standing there staring at us.
Correct, because everybody's gonna wonder what we do with that UAA team. They got that 611 winning percentage, but man, look at that SOS.
Now, in this case, let me ask you guys, this is a great example. So we're looking at Carnegie Mellon.
Yep.
611, 582. We can have a whole QCast in the room about the UAA for a second. Now, the things that are not in play here would be like Matt Snyder's win over NYU doesn't really factor in.
No.
Whitman, but Carnegie Mellon beat Case Western Reserve. They are kind of already in our regional ranking. So that the Case win very much comes into play here, right?
Yep. So that's why I would already have them. So I've got you now. We're looking at, and this is where, like, when people want to know why we're on the call for 4 to 5 hours, this is why. It's never really the conversations at the top. You have got to get those last two teams right.
So let me go ahead, Ryan.
Here's a key distinction too, also with the St. Vincent, in here, and if we're doing our due diligence and we're throwing them all in there, if we're talking Hope, we're talking Marietta, we're talking St. Vincent. Like, if you actually go in and look at St. Vincent's record, yes, they have an 882, but they've only played 16 in division games versus Hope and Marietta have played 19. So they actually have the same amount of wins. Hope and Marietta and St. Vincent all only have 14 wins.
Right. What about at this point? Remind me, guys, do you go into secondary criteria at all for, like, Matt's got non-conference SOS in here, which we can see. Is that coming to play at all?
Ding, ding. Bingo card first, Rick, before you jump in. Yes. Second page. Rick's our second page guru. So go ahead, Rick.
We really don't want to go there if we don't have to.
Okay.
And so much of this conversation becomes philosophical for that specific committee. All right. So how much how are we going to value that SOS? All right. And we may all take a peek at it and know what the answer is, but we want to be consistent throughout the 10 regions. So whatever we do in region 7, we got to make sure we're doing it everywhere else. So especially the first region or two that we look at, we take a lot of time, because then we want to come back and revisit it and make sure we're doing it the same way throughout the country. So we're not, maybe another country has a St. Vincent type team, and they moved ahead of a team with a high SOS. And so consistency is really important here. So we'll go there, but we try not to, if say like, right. Say Hope and Marietta, say, they like that, just say like their SOS was maybe not 0.12 different, but maybe 0.05 different, and their winning percentage was the same, and common opponents was the same. That's a clear cut, second page. But this one, as it is now, we really try to stay with just the primary criteria.
Let me ask this too, guys, around common opponents, because when I was talking about Hope and Marietta with Calvin, what I forgot is that Hope also lost to Calvin. There's a split there. So Hope lost at Calvin and won at home versus Calvin. Marietta played Calvin on a neutral court and lost. I don't know what that means. What, like, how what happens in those? It happens all the time. So what does that mean?
Yeah, those are tricky conversations from region to region, especially when you have conference opponents in the head-to-head. You know, and that's tricky from, you'll hear sport to sport, they'll take common opponents and they just use the percentage. And then we really dive into that. Like,
Right.
does that 1-in-1, is that the same as a 1-0?
Right.
Just because they're conference opponents and they get the opportunity to play twice, you know what I mean? So, we really do have those discussions, and just because you're not a conference opponent and you only have the opportunity to play them once, but then you're a conference opponent and you get two opportunities to play each other, it is a lot different. And
Right.
so you can't really just take the results first, or the head-to-head or you
Yeah.
really have to look at that. You can't just pull up,
Yeah.
the data and look at percentages in those. You really, really have to do your due diligence and look at that.
And I think location is, I don't know, do you ever talk about that as like,
Yeah.
you say that Marietta
Uh,
played Calvin on a neutral court, but Hope's win over Calvin is at Hope's gym. So it's not like an actual, I don't know. Do you ever get into the details of the common opponent, stuff like that, like where the games were?
A little.
A little, but we
Yeah,
can't get that far into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
We
that
I mean,
can't
makes
get
sense.
that
at
far.
the end, maybe, but right now, no.
Yeah. No.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let's recap. I think there's 5 teams: John Carroll, Trine, Calvin, Mount Union, Case. We
Mhm.
felt good about. So
Yep.
I think we said between Geneva and St. Vincent, if they're kind of in a similar grouping, that we have St. Vincent over Geneva, right? So as we're looking at that grouping of teams, we're probably more comparing St. Vincent to the other resumes. So are we comfortable we said that Hope and Marietta are the next under consideration, like for spot 6. So in filling spot 6, Hope versus Marietta versus St. Vincent, where are we there?
We're at Hope.
We're at Hope.
Hope's
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope's in spot
Yep.
6. Done
Yep.
deal. Hope's in, right?
Yep.
And they're over
then-
Marietta. So we've got, I mean, they're SOS. So 700 versus, they have an SOS advantage there. That one's really close, right?
Yeah.
Hope and Marietta is really
Yeah.
close.
Yep.
It's really close, but for now, with the data that we have, it's Hope.
So we have one spot
Yep.
left. We have a spot 7 left. And by the way, another fair, constructive complaint from the Region 7 crew is that maybe they should have an 8th team. Look at all the power here, but that's not a thing. Like this has to work for multiple sports. And so there are 7 ranked teams here. We have one
Mhm.
spot left.
Bob, it's all going to work out, Bob. It's all going to work
Yeah.
out.
I like it.
It's gonna shake out. It's gonna shake out. Yeah.
It always does.
Mark your bingo card if you didn't already. It's all going to work out.
Yep.
So for our spot 7, I think our candidates here are Marietta, St. Vincent, and Carnegie Mellon. Is there any team we didn't talk about that's in the mix besides those 3?
I'm pretty comfortable with those 3.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
likewise.
talk us through then. How
Yeah.
would this work on a real rack? Like, how are you picking your final team between St. Vincent, Marietta, and Carnegie Mellon?
This is where not having the NCAA tool hinders us a little,
Yep.
because the ability to compare these teams and see if they have common opponents. There's no head to head. I'm pretty certain of that. So that being a primary criteria that impacts us, because that, somebody has a better record against common opponents. That's going to help us to differentiate. Beyond that, then, we're breaking them down and we're saying, okay, we got a winning percent, they're this many games ahead in win-loss, and so maybe not percentage, but maybe by games, kind of like you look at the baseball standings, and you're 3 games back. And we have a differential in the SOS of point whatever. And so now we just put those 3 together and we start managing, and this is where it's, the in the room stuff really, really kicks in is, what are we valuing?
Yeah.
Are we putting a lot on SOS? Are we looking at balance? Are we looking at win-loss? And, that's where I think we all, it's, unless you're truly there, you don't know for certain how the committee is going to value that in any particular year.
Yeah, because I mean, I mean, because we would, if we had a 3-team conundrum like this, we would always
Right.
try to eliminate one team. That's what we would do first. Like, so how do you eliminate one from this? And, you know, we would go round and round to see who we could eliminate first. And so in this situation, like, the question would be like, are we eliminating the outlier? Are we eliminating the outlier here?
Now, let me ask that.
But
What is
is
the
the
outlier? Yeah.
that's the question.
Well,
Is
there's two outliers.
that's what I said. Is the outlier going to be the winning percentage, or the outlier going to be the SOS? And that's what the committee. So we're on the fake committee right now. They're the real.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
the real committee this year going to value the winning percentage or the SOS more? And in this case, we have a winning percentage of 611 being the outlier here, or we have an SOS being 495 as the
The other
outlier.
one more disclaimer too about this is just when the real rankings come out Tuesday, in fairness to this crew, the data will go through Sunday games, which means
Yeah.
that like all these teams are going to play again.
Yeah.
In fact, like
Right.
the UAA
Right.
teams, Carnegie Mellon's going to get a chance to play WashU and Chicago.
Yeah, they might have 2 wins.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
we're doing
Yeah.
this today here on
Yeah.
Friday morning, and the numbers will be different. So just a disclaimer, but
That kind of changes. I mean, for me, that kind of
Yeah.
changes things too. If you
It
think about
does,
Yep.
yeah. We always have teams that grab your bingo card, can play their way in.
right, in this case,
And they
Carnegie
can
would
play their
yeah.
way out. Like these teams that are right on the bottom of it, it's an important piece
Yeah.
because if they're ranked, then that's a ranked win for a lot of teams. So we have to make sure we get the bottom of
Yeah.
it right.
Yeah,
But as
that's
I said, these teams can play their way in or out of these spots very easily.
And do you think with Carnegie Mellon, I'm trying to figure out like which of the 3 we eliminate. Carnegie with the 611 at this moment, and we don't have RROs, so we don't have we don't have those to lean on. Is 611 the outlier here that gets eliminated? Is my question.
Here, I'll take it a little different direction, Bob. I would, in my opinion, where I would go with this is I would say that the 611 takes them out and the 495 takes them out.
So you
And
like
I would
taking
go
both of the outliers out?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
In this situation, and
Yep.
I would go Marietta
Yep.
because they have a solid win-loss and they have a relatively strong SOS, and kind of let the other teams, let's see how they go, because even though we rank 7, we always look at 9, and so those would be my 2 that I would kind of have on the outside looking in. That's how I would. That's if I was leading this region. That's how I would do it.
Sarah,
Yep.
Ryan, you agree with that?
Well, no,
That
and then-
Marietta?
for the bingo card right now, they have the totality of the resume. They have both. So they have-
Marietta has a little bit of everything going
Yeah,
right
they
now.
have-
They have a strong across the board resume right now.
right now with
Right.
the criteria that we have.
Gotcha. So
Correct.
are we all in agreement that as of the data through yesterday, the data through Thursday, the 1st, which we're looking at, that the In the Room crew is going with John Carroll, Trine, Calvin, Mount Union, Case Western Reserve, Hope, and Marietta. Those would be the 7 teams. And then someone in the Room committee would have to then alphabetize those 7. And we clarified it would not be Ryan Kane. He did not feel
No, those
comfortable with
NCAA
that.
folks are really smart. We just let the NCAA folks do it. They're
Yeah,
very
they-
smart.
They
They just
alphabetize
click-
it.
Yeah, they just click
Yes.
a button.
Yeah, yeah. Take us out of the equation. We're just dumb jocks.
Yeah,
I-
we're
right.
fake. Yeah.
I believe that Calvin would be listed first here, and so I believe that's the case.
They're ahead of Case. They're ahead of Case, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So that's pretty cool, guys. Like that's I'm gonna stop sharing here a little bit. Okay, so again, that was QCast production at its finest, folks. We shared a screen.
Smooth transition.
I feel like it
Yeah.
was. I feel it. I can only get better from here, guys. So that's really fun stuff, guys. Like that's, I think to see you guys work through, that was a good region, right? The reason we picked it
Mhm.
is because nobody here has a vested interest in that region. Sarah, your school is in region, 6? And Ryan, your school is in region 8. Rick, you're in region 5? Region 5?
5. Yep.
And and as the host, my school's in Region 8. So we wanted no issues. So we picked Region 7. But do you think, Sarah, like that was a pretty good region because we saw all kinds of different resumes we had to work through there?
Yeah, I think it was good. And it will be interesting to see then, and we can even follow up on Region 7 in the room. It'll be interesting to see some of the philosophies from the National Committee. I know that Rick and I always kind of shared the same philosophy when it came to some of these things. Kaner was a wild card sometimes, sometimes he waved some certain flags every now and then. Sometimes he was a flip-flopper. You just never knew. But Rick and I always held strong on our philosophies throughout the years together. So it will be interesting to see, without the three of us on the committee anymore, where they just where the line is, what they value. And I think it'll be very easy for us to pick up on that.
And we're at a cool place where those rankings will come out Tuesday. I think they used to be a little later in the week. And I remember Mike Shower era, they said they bumped them up.
Yeah, we did.
There's a ton of games on Wednesday. So when you release them on Wednesday, and then there's all these games that change it all of a sudden, it seems weird. So they're Tuesday now. Let me just quick final thoughts for you guys. We've got the regional rankings coming out, and then we'll have the next ranking. Just quick final thoughts on where we are in the process and kind of how exciting this time of year is. I'll start with Rick Ferry. Your final thoughts on the QCast today, Rick.
Yeah, no, it is. This is where, all the, the whole season, you boil it down to these final weeks, and it's so much fun to watch and track and see how teams move. And, it's funny, you serve on this committee for the whole year, but your work is all consolidated into these final weeks. And it's a great time of year.
Appreciate that, Rick. And I know how busy you are. And so appreciate you being here. Ryan, Kane, your final thoughts on the QCast in the room here today.
Yeah, I mean, I would just make sure you understand that, if we did start talking about Region 8 and we brought up the Titans, you would have to leave the call.
Yes, I would. I don't know
That's
if I
how
could
it
take
works.
it.
You're not allowed to get emotional about your team and where they
Right.
should be ranked. So if we really want to see, the likes and subscribes go up here on this thing, I mean, we probably need to get your emotions raised up about your Titans.
Well, you could have had a
Or
live
we can have a
cam on
simple
me.
little, friendly wager between you and I, got a big one coming up a week from now.
I agree. And I mean, we could have had a live cam on me during the Milliken game. That would have increased subscribers. I mean, the Big Blue. We won 15 in a row and 28 and 29 against those guys, and I got a loss right now.
Hey, this crazy stuff can happen in Decatur.
I agree with that. I agree. Thank you, Ryan Kane. I appreciate that. And I am looking forward to that big ball game in Kenosha coming up after our other big ball game against Elmhurst. And Sarah, the former chair of the men's basketball committee, who is now leading this In the Room segment. Sarah, your final thoughts for the QCast In the Room segment today.
Yeah, I love it. This is, when we started talking about this, last year in Fort Wayne, here we are doing it in the room, and I hope that the people like it. I have a lot of, I will have a lot of positive thoughts to, I've got my basketball coach looking in the room right now, making fun of, in the room right now, but, shout out to Coach Placeres. But I got a lot of thoughts and prayers headed Luke's way. He's gonna have a lot of mean tweets coming.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait for them. I'm gonna read them all, and I'm just gonna laugh, and I'm gonna screenshot them, and I will read them all with him when it's all said and done, and we can compare mean tweets from last year to this year. And but no, in fairness to him, I think he will lead a good group. I think he will, I think I already have an idea of what his group is going to value and how he's going to lead them. And I think once again, he's already sent me some kind of questions of, how can we do this? And, questions on bracketing and stuff like that. So I think he's already thinking in the right direction, and I can't wait to see how this is going to shake out. I mean, because it always does, right? It always does.
Well,
And,
on
we'll
bracketing,
see.
he can
Yeah.
check out my guy Poppers. This guy has a bracket every couple days. If he needs help on bracketing, my guy Kiva Poppers is all over that.
Right.
In all seriousness, folks, that you guys are awesome. I know how busy you are, and to give an hour of your time to help Division III fans understand how this stuff works, it helps the fans. I think it actually helps the real committee too, because you start to answer some of the questions that maybe they don't have to deal with while they do their job. So you guys are awesome. We'll do this again very soon, because now we're getting into the nitty gritty of the numbered rankings.
Yeah,
So,
you should take questions. People should email you questions.
a
Bob.
mailbag segment,
Yeah, for our
There you
next
go.
one, we
The
could
D-
take
Yeah.
questions.
The
Yeah.
Datacast has a mailbag segment, and again, they're producers. They produce. But now that I share PowerPoint screens, the sky is the limit on the QCast, folks.
Yeah, we're good.
So, guys, that is season 4, episode 31, and that is another fun in the room segment. Thank you to Sara Quatrocky, Ryan Kane, and Rick Ferry. You guys are awesome, and we look forward to working through here the championship season, guys. Thank you so much.